Welcome back. This lecture is about theories of personal identity. It's a survey of 3 different views we're going to look at, among others, some of their reasons and some objections to them. Knowledge of these 3 theories should set us up for the rest of the unit. We've already seen that the view that's being defended by Gretchen in John Perry's dialogue is the bodily or physical organism view of personal identity. That's the view that whatever makes the same physical organism across time is what makes for the same person across time. This kind of view accepts that bodies change, grow, and age. Much the same way every other animal organism's body changes, grows, and age. It just says that human beings and people can't be differentiated from other animals in this sense. Bodies can be duplicated in the sense of being cloned or twinned. That's just a biological fact. But when that happens, what emerges is a different organism. It's a twin of yours or a clone of yours. That different organism is at a different place in space and time. It's got different experiences as soon as you split. This view, you might call it the scientific view or the naturalistic view, has some objections to it. The first objection, and you can think about how much of an objection this is that human beings are really used to body swapping stories. These stories go back a long time in human history. And they're exemplified by movies like Freaky Friday or Rob Schneider and The Hot Chick and countless others. The idea behind these movies is that one day someone wakes up and is actually not themselves but their mom or their girlfriend or somebody else. When you watch these movies, you can suspend some disbelief, but you can easily follow what's happening in them. If the bodily view of personal identity is correct, you wouldn't be able to make sense of any of these movies. Instead, you would interpret all of them as a person who's lost their mind and suddenly think they're their own mother. We can differentiate between movies where people swap bodies and movies where people wake up having lost their mind and think that they're their own mother. Those are differences that we can understand. If the bodily view of personal identity is true, we shouldn't be able to understand that. It should be that every movie, which is a body swapping movie, is interpreted by us as a movie in which people lose their mind and think they're someone else. Another objection, and you can think how good of an objection this is that these views rule out an afterlife by definition. You don't even have to argue about whether or not there's an afterlife. Physical organisms, being all there are, cannot survive the death of their bodies because that's just what it means to die. And finally, an objection that's taken very seriously in the dialogue is that bodily views can't make sense of how we identify ourselves over time. It's actually kind of funny to think about. When you wake up in the morning, how can you tell who you are? It's very weird to think that you don't know who you are until you step in front of the mirror and look and say, aha, I'm Barry Lamb. That's just not how we do it. The way we do it is laying in bed thinking about what we did last night, what we did yesterday, what we're going to do today. We just have a sense that we are who we are. And we know what it would be like to lose our memory and not know who we are, to wake up not knowing. Some of us might have actually experienced that. That experience is not the experience of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person looking back at us. If anything, it's just self-inspection, not the inspection of our bodies. One leading contender to the bodily view, as expressed in the dialogue, is the soul view. This is the one you see from the Phaedo, which we've just done. And this is the view that's had by billions and billions of people across many different religions. And the view is that what makes for the same person across time is having the same immaterial soul. The word immaterial is very important. The soul can't be a physical thing. That would reduce this view to the physical organism view. You can't say the soul is the brain. You can't say the soul is a particular part of the brain. That would just be saying that it's some version of the physical organism view. It has to be non-physical. It has to be the kind of thing that doesn't die when the body dies and doesn't decay when the body decays. But given that, the view that the self is a soul makes an afterlife possible, but it doesn't make an afterlife actual. You aren't committed to the view that you do have an afterlife if you believe in the soul. You have to tell a story about what souls are like and how they survive. So just because you believe in a soul doesn't mean you must believe in an afterlife. But you should be able to believe that it's possible. There are many objections to the soul immaterial entity view of personal identity. Of course, many come from science and a generally naturalistic view of the world, where the world is nothing more than physical things. Let's set that aside. Even opening up the possibility that there are such things as immaterial souls. One objection is that these views don't solve the problems left over by the bodily view. For instance, it doesn't make sense of how we identify ourselves over time. When you wake up and figure out that you know who you are, or you don't know who you are, is it really the case that you're inspecting your own soul? What would that even mean, to inspect your own soul? It's immaterial. You can't see it. And you might say that you feel it. Whatever that means, when I lay there thinking about who I am, I inspect my life experiences, my memories, my reactions to things, people I know. I'm inspecting contents of my own mind. You might say, maybe that's the soul. But of course, that's just conflating two different things. Advocates of the soul are conflating things they are not entitled to conflate. You get that a soul is an immaterial, non-physical thing. That's just the definition of it. But you don't get to assume that a soul is what makes you distinctively recognizable to yourself. The way we identify ourselves to ourselves, what we would be missing if we had amnesia. You don't get to assume that it's because we've lost track of our own soul. Being an immaterial thing, you haven't given us a story as to how we keep track of that thing. Consider this thought experiment. It turns out that you are a clone. You were actually only created last night, using the genetic material of a previous person and given all of their memories, just like the duplicates in the Prestige of Angiers. Now you wake up and you think that you are a certain person, that you have a certain set of memories. You will think that you are no different than the person who actually wakes up and is you. The clones of Angier don't think they're any different from Angier, but they are different. The question is, do you know whether or not you are you or just the clone on the basis of this story? Do you know that you weren't created just last night and given all of the memories as though you've existed for 18 years, 20 years, 21 years, however old you are. This is called a skeptical concern. And I don't think that you should be too worried about it. Because the skeptical concern only arises if you think that the soul is something that you have to detect in order to know that you're the same person across time. If we really needed to be soul detectors to know that we are who we are, then we're in trouble. Because all we have access to are our memories and our psychological characteristics. But those can be duplicated. Those can be had by different souls, as far as our story goes. Consider the original Angiers and a duplicate of Angiers. Do they have two different immaterial souls? Well, they must. How could two different bodies with two different sets of conscious experiences have one soul? But if they're two different souls, that means that different souls can carry the same psychological characteristics and memories. And if that's true, then how do you know you yourself have had the same soul your whole life? Why can't it be more like this? Different souls come in, but they manifest or realize the same psychological characteristics and memories. The analogy that Gretchen Weyraub uses is the analogy of a river. Traits of a river can be had by lots of different molecules of water. There's this ancient Greek saying that you can't step in the same river twice. On one reading, that's true. A river is a constant stream of different water molecules. And you're never going to step into a river with the same water molecules crossing your feet. But there's another reading where it can't be true. You can step into the Hudson River twice, even though it's made up of different molecules. And what that means is to be the Hudson River is to be something that is realized by different pieces of water at different times. Similarly, to be a person can be the same set of psychological characteristics and memories realized by different souls. The soul theorist isn't entitled to assume that even if there are immaterial souls, one and the same soul goes with one set of psychological characteristics. That's possible, but it's also possible for different souls to have the same memories or psychological characteristics, just like different molecules of water can realize the same Hudson River. So, when you detect your own self when you wake up in the morning, your judgment is consistent with having the same soul over time, but it's also consistent with having different souls realizing the same psychological characteristics and memories. What this means is that you aren't detecting your own soul at all. You're just detecting your psychological characteristics. We're familiar with this in terms of computer memory. If what's important to you is your copy of Rainbow Connection, and it's on a thumb drive, and somebody comes in overnight and replaces your thumb drive with a completely different thumb drive, which has the same file on it, and you get up and you listen to your copy of Rainbow Connection, you can't tell that somebody replaced it, but it also doesn't matter, because your copy of Rainbow Connection hasn't changed, even though what realizes it, a different thumb drive, has changed. And so the last view tries to solve these problems. These are called Lockean views after John Locke. The view is, since how we detect ourselves is just through our conscious experiences and memories, let's just get rid of souls altogether. conscious experiences and memories themselves are the things that make us the same person across time. And it doesn't matter what the underlying physical or non-physical realizations are. It doesn't matter which bodies, what kind of bodies, or what kind of souls, or which souls realize those conscious experiences. It's exactly the same thing as thinking that it doesn't matter what hardware has saved your copy of Rainbow Connection. What matters is the copy of Rainbow Connection itself. Here is the Lockean view. What makes two people different people at a time? Let's say the difference between you and Justin Bieber. We're not going to postulate souls, and we don't have to postulate bodies at all. The answer to that is going to be, for Locke, both of you are conscious of different things. You are currently conscious of my face on a screen. Hopefully, Justin Bieber is not conscious of such a thing, or I'll be pretty scared. Maybe Bieber is conscious of his estate that he's looking at. What you're conscious of is a rich thing. It's not just what you're looking at. It's all the experience you're having at a time and what you're thinking of, how you're feeling. All of those experiences that make up your consciousness. Two people are different at a time when they're conscious of different things. Okay, now let's generalize that. When you look across time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there are going to be a lot of moments of consciousness. Depending on how many people are out there, there are billions of moments of consciousness. And each moment, each day has many moments. So let's say there are billions of consciousness. Let's focus on 3 particular moments. On Monday, there's a moment of consciousness. On Wednesday, there's a moment of consciousness. On Thursday, there are many of them. What makes all of these different moments of consciousness part of the same person? Here's Locke's view. If one later moment of consciousness is conscious of an earlier moment of consciousness, then that's the same person. What does it mean to be conscious of an earlier moment of consciousness? I am conscious of yesterday having recorded a lecture on the prestige. You may be conscious of yesterday having left your dorm to grab a meal. Being conscious of a previous moment of consciousness is remembering it. So on Thursday, you might have the conscious experience of remembering your conscious experience of Wednesday. And that's what this slide represents. A moment of consciousness on Thursday that contains the earlier moment of consciousness on Wednesday. Locke's view is that when a later moment of consciousness contains an earlier moment of consciousness, then that makes for the same person, which is equivalent to the view that if a moment of consciousness later, say on Thursday, remembers the moment of consciousness on Wednesday, then both of those moments of consciousness are connected. They're part of the same person. This view makes it out so that a person is a stream of moments of consciousness. For Locke, that means memories. A person is a stream of conscious memories over time. Because 3 different moments of consciousness are connected by memory, that makes for Barry Lamb, and a completely distinct set of moments of conscious experiences are connected somewhere else. That's Justin Bieber. This view of Locke's, which we'll talk about in class, and whether it is subject to objections, makes it so that we can talk about how to survive the death of your own body. Suppose you have 3 moments of consciousness that constitutes Justin Bieber's memories. What would it take for Justin Bieber to survive? It's for there to be a later moment of consciousness that remembers these 3 moments of consciousness. If that happens, then Justin will have survived. There will be a person in the future who is Justin Bieber, as long as there are moments of consciousness that remember the current moments of consciousness that Justin Bieber has. So, how does that make the afterlife possible? If Justin Bieber today, this stream of moments of consciousness, is such that there is a body, his body, is flattened by a truck, that moment of consciousness comes to an end. But if later there is another moment of consciousness that remembers this whole set of experiences, then it follows that Justin Bieber has survived because that later moment of consciousness remembers all of these earlier ones. So survival is a matter of having memories that persist into the future. How might this happen after the death of the body? Who knows? The advocate of the Lockean view of personal identity just says, identity consists in the persistence of memories into the future. How those memories are realized is something we don't know. But it doesn't matter. If they're realized by some new body, then that new body is the old person. If it's realized by a soul, then that soul is the old person. And this is what makes sense of body swapping movies. We follow body swapping movies because we think someone in a different body has all of the same memories as another body had earlier. But what matters is the memories and not the body. That's why in Freaky Friday, the daughter's body is now where the mother is, and the mother's body is where the daughter is. What realizes the memories and consciousness don't matter. And so we don't have the skeptical concern that when you wake up in the morning, you don't know whether or not you've just been created. As long as you have the memories that are had by Barry Lamb, you're Barry Lamb. It doesn't matter if the new body was created last night. Barry Lamb just is the set of memories that Barry Lamb has. There are a lot of objections to the Lockean view. We'll talk about those in class.